Consider the function and graph f of x equals 8 times the absolute value of x over x squared minus 9. The graph to your bottom right illustrates the graph of this function. The denominator is 0 if x equals negative 3 or positive 3. The numerator is x. It cannot cancel out either one of those two factors from the denominator. That means negative 3 and positive 3, those values of x are vertical asymptotes. The limits at the bottom of your screen were asked to determine whether the function approaches negative infinity or positive infinity as x approaches negative 3 from the left and from the right. This will be the vertical asymptote we're focusing on. The limit as we approach negative 3 from the left, you get on your function and you follow it in and you slowly approach the vertical asymptote of negative 3 from the left side of it. The y values get infinitely large. The limit as we approach negative 3 from the right side, that would be this part of the graph. The closer we get to the vertical asymptote, the larger our function values get. That one's also infinity. Both sides of the vertical asymptote have graphs that get larger and larger. Y values increase infinitely. The next function is tangent of pi over 4x. The graph of it is to the right of your screen. We are asked to focus on the vertical asymptote of positive 2. I've got it highlighted in black. As we approach 2 from the left, the closer we get to 2 on the left side of it, the larger our y values get. That's positive infinity. The closer we get to 2 from the right side, the smaller our function values get, infinitely small or negative. In this problem, our function is 1 over x minus 3 quantity squared. The denominator, it's possible for it to be 0. We don't want x to be 3 because that's what makes our denominator 0. The 1 cannot cancel out the x minus 3, so x equals 3 is a vertical asymptote. And that's why we're asked to investigate values of x as they approach 3. From the left, you would use numbers that are smaller than 3, but pretty close. When you approach from the right, you get close to 3, but you have to use numbers that are larger than 3. See how this one's just barely left of 3, and this one's barely right of 3? When you don't have a graph to look at, you can pick values very close to your limit. As we approach 3 from the left, you can use numbers like 2.99 or 2.999. Using your calculator, you get a very large answer. In fact, the more nines you put here, the larger that answer gets. And it's the same thing when you approach 3 from the right. You put in a number slightly larger than 3, make your calculation. The closer you get to 3 without actually being 3, the larger your answer gets. And that's the idea of a limit approaching from the left and right, and whether or not you run into a vertical asymptote and your values are getting really large or really negative. For this function, we have f of x equals 1 over x squared minus 25. That denominator factors as a difference of 2 squares. We're not able to cancel, so both of these factors will produce vertical asymptotes. If you look at our values of x on the left side of your screen, these are approaching -5 from the left side of it. Top right of your screen, if I get real close to -5, but I do it from the left side, I'll have numbers like -5.1, -5.01, etc. When I approach from the right side, I'll have numbers like -4.9, -4.99, and that's what this right column is doing. These x values approach -5, but from the right side of it. Pause the video if you need to. Substitute each x value. In class, we did it in the original function. You can do it in the factored one too. But pause, make sure that when you sub these x values in, that you're getting answers similar to what you see on our screen. Okay, if you paused, welcome back. If you didn't, let's finish this out. Our limits are approaching -5 from the left and from the right. This value is when we approached -5 from the left, our y values kept getting larger and larger. The more zeros you put here, the larger that gets. Positive infinity. In the right column, we looked at x values that approach -5, but from the right side. These values get more and more negative. The more 9s you put behind the 4, the more negative your answer will get.